that 13-year-old girl who was lured by an internet predator, transported across state lines to Virginia, in fact, not so very far from here, and enslaved by a sadistic pedophile monster. The authorities told my parents that the odds were 1,000,000 to 1 against my recovery. But I was the exception. I got the miracle. I was rescued. So why me? I was abducted by an internet predator.
In 2002, I was totally clueless as to the dangers of the internet. My daughter was sitting in a common room, talking to a box. Yeah, to my mind, that's what she was doing. All of the knowledge of the world is able to be gotten now through the internet.
I trusted him wholeheartedly. He was a friend, no matter what. He was my best friend and confidant. Tell him anything. He had the answer for any question.
Alicia, what did you think when you saw your parents?
Yeah, you could say that.
I was very, very happy and relieved.
Did you give him a big hug?
Yep.
A 13-year-old girl walked past a Christmas tree and opened her front door without a coat. Outside, New Year's night was freezing, dark and silent. She thought she was only stepping out for a moment to meet someone she believed was a friend. But the person waiting near her street was not a boy. He was a grown man who had spent months building trust through a screen. Within minutes, Alicia Kozakiewicz vanished from her Pittsburgh neighborhood. And for 4 days, the only trail left behind was hidden inside the family computer. This is how the internet opened a door. Crafton Heights, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, January 1st, 2002. The night was cold enough to make the air feel sharp, the kind of cold that made people hurry from their cars to their front doors, shoulders raised, hands buried deep in their pockets. But inside the Kozakiewicz home, there was warmth. There was family. There was food on the table, holiday noise in the rooms, and the fading glow of Christmas still hanging over the house. Alicia Kozakiewicz was 13 years old. She was not supposed to become a headline. She was not supposed to become a warning. That night, she was just a girl in a quiet Pittsburgh neighborhood, surrounded by people who loved her, in a home that had always felt safe. The family had just come through the holidays. Christmas memories were still close. Music, decorations, laughter, and the small, ordinary moments that only become painful when you look back and realize they were the last ones before everything changed. Somewhere near the front of the house stood the Christmas tree. Not as evidence, not as a symbol yet, just a tree. Just part of the season. Just part of a normal home. Dinner had been familiar, the kind of family meal that made the house feel full, the kind of evening no one thinks to record in detail, because nothing about it seems important at the time. Parents talking, dishes being cleared, the rhythm of a household moving through the end of a holiday evening. Then Alicia said she did not feel well. It was a small thing, a normal thing. The kind of sentence any child might say after a long day, after a big meal, after the excitement of the holidays. She asked to go upstairs and lie down. No one had a reason to be alarmed. In another version of this night, Alicia walks upstairs. She lies down. Maybe she rests for a while. Maybe she comes back down later. Maybe she comes back down later. Maybe someone saves her a plate of dessert. Maybe the family finishes the evening and remembers nothing about it years later because nothing happened. But that was not the version of the night they were given. Instead, Alicia moved toward the front of the house. She passed the Christmas tree. She opened the front door, and she stepped outside. She did not put on a coat. That detail matters, because this was not a child planning to disappear into the night. This was not someone preparing for a long walk. She thought she would only be gone for a moment. A quick hello, a brief meeting, then back inside, back through the same door, back into the warm house, where her family was only a few rooms away. Alicia would later explain it simply. Alicia, I was only going outside to say hello. Narrator. But that small sentence would become the line her family wished they could pull back forever, because Alicia was not the kind of child who loved the dark. She was not the kind of child who enjoyed the cold. She was afraid of going outside alone. after nightfall. She hated freezing weather. She had no reason to leave the safety of her home without a coat, unless she truly believed she was coming right back. That is what makes the moment so haunting. The danger did not begin with a broken window. It did not begin with a stranger forcing his way into the house. It began with trust, with a message, with a voice from a screen that had slowly become familiar. Someone Alicia believed she knew, someone she thought was a friend. Outside, the street was quiet. The neighborhood around her had always felt safe. Crafton Heights was the kind of place where families knew the streets, where houses held generations of memory, where the ordinary sounds of life made people feel protected. But that night, the safety of the neighborhood ended just beyond the front door. Scott Tyree was waiting. He was not a boy. He was not the person Alicia believed she was meeting. He was a grown man who had traveled to Pittsburgh after spending months building a false sense of trust through the internet. And in the cold darkness of New Year's night, he was close enough to call her name. Alicia walked up the street. For a moment, no one was there. Then something inside her warned her. Turn around. Go home. That small inner voice came too late. She heard her name, and then the night changed. 1 second, she was a 13-year-old girl standing near her own street. The next, she was in a car with a man she did not truly know. Familiar street signs began to disappear. The neighborhood she had known all her life started to fall behind her. The house, the dinner, the Christmas tree, the open door, all of it was suddenly moving farther away. Back inside, her family still believed Alicia was nearby, maybe upstairs, maybe resting, maybe just out of sight. They did not know that the ordinary evening had already split in two. One version still inside the warm house, and another speeding away into the dark. By the time her family realized something was wrong, Alicia was no longer in Pittsburgh. Before the open door, before the cold street, before the car pulled away from Pittsburgh, there was another doorway inside Alicia's home. It did not look dangerous. It had no lock, no broken glass, no warning sign. It was a computer. Around the year 2000, the Kozakiewicz family got their first family computer. It was not small and sleek like the devices children use today. It was big, slow, and ordinary looking, the kind of machine many families were bringing into their homes at the time without fully understanding what it could invite in. And the family tried to be careful. The computer was not hidden in Alicia's bedroom. It was not placed behind a closed door, away from adults. It sat in the living room, where people passed by, where parents could look over and see what was happening. That was the safety plan. That was what made sense then. Parent, the computer was in the family room. We thought we could see what was happening. Narrator. But seeing the screen was not the same as knowing who was behind it. To Alicia, the internet did not feel like danger. It felt like connection. It felt like school friends, games, homework, and small conversations that helped her feel included. If her friends were online, then she wanted to be online too. If everyone was using instant messages, then having a screen name felt normal. It was part of growing up at that moment in time. There was no TikTok, no Instagram, no modern social media feed constantly refreshing in a child's hand. Back then, the online world was quieter, slower, and in some ways more mysterious. Chat rooms, email, and instant messaging were the places where young people gathered. You could talk to classmates. You could meet friends of friends. You could follow a chain of introductions until a stranger no longer felt like a stranger. That was the trap. Because the internet has a strange way of making distance disappear. A person could be miles away and still feel close. A person could be much older and still pretend to be young. A person could know nothing about you in the beginning, then slowly learn your habits, your moods, your insecurities, your favorite things, and the exact words that made you stay. Alicia once described the internet almost like a big board game, a place where there was always someone to talk to, always someone willing to play, always someone available. For a child, that could feel harmless, even comforting, especially when the adults in your life were busy, or when school felt complicated, or when being 13 meant feeling misunderstood by almost everyone around you. And that is what makes this case so unsettling. Her parents were not careless people. They were not ignoring danger on purpose. They were living in a moment when many families had not yet been taught how danger could move through a wire, a screen, and a friendly message. The old warnings were about strangers on the street. Do not get into a car. Do not talk to someone you do not know. Stay close to home. But what happens when the stranger is already inside the home every night? Not physically, not visibly, but present, waiting, typing, listening. Alicia's parents could walk through the living room and see their daughter sitting safely at the family computer. They could see her hands on the keyboard. They could see the glow of the monitor. They could see that she was still in the house, but they could not see the person on the other side. They could not see the person on the other side. They could not see the patience. They could not see the planning. They could not see how a grown man was slowly shaping himself into someone Alicia believed she could trust. That was the blind spot. The danger did not need to enter through the front door. It did not need to break a window. It did not need to stand outside the house for months in a visible way. It could appear as a message, a username, a friendly sentence at the right time, a person who seemed to listen better than everyone else. And in 2002, there were not widespread school assemblies about online safety the way there are today. There were not constant public warnings. There were not years of stories teaching parents what to look for. For many families, the computer still felt like a tool for homework, games, communication, maybe curiosity. It did not yet feel like a place where someone could study a child. That is why the living room detail matters so much. Because the computer was placed in the room that was supposed to be safest. The room where family gathered. The room where nothing seemed hidden. The room where a parent could pass by and believe everything was fine. But the screen created a second room. One the family could not enter. One where Alicia was being spoken to by someone they did not know. The computer was in the safest room of the house. That was the part no one could understand later. Because when Alicia finally walked out the front door on New Year's night, the danger had not arrived suddenly. It had already been there for months. It had just been waiting behind the glow of the screen. Before Alicia ever opened the front door, before she stepped into the freezing New Year's night, before her family realized she was gone, someone had already spent months getting close to her, not in the way people around her could see, not by standing outside the house, not by walking through her neighborhood. He entered through conversation. Alicia met him in a chat room, a place that, to a 13-year-old girl in the early 2000s, did not feel like a dark corner of the world. It felt like a place to talk, a place to pass time, a place where school friends, friends of friends, and new names could blend together until the difference between familiar and unknown became dangerously thin. He did not appear as a threat. That was the point. He appeared as someone close to her age, someone with similar interests, someone who listened, someone who seemed available at exactly the right moments. When Alicia felt lonely, confused, frustrated, or simply wanted to be heard, he was there, not as a warning sign, as comfort. That is what makes this part of the story so important, because Alicia was not foolish. She was not careless in the way some people might try to imagine from a distance. She was a child, and she was being targeted by a grown man who understood patience, control, and timing far better than she could have understood danger. Children often do not experience online strangers as strangers for very long. After enough messages, a username can start to feel like a person. After enough late conversations, a person can start to feel trusted. After enough shared jokes, copied interests, and gentle replies, a stranger can begin to feel safer than the adults who are actually trying to protect you. That is the cruel imbalance at the center of this case. The adults in Alicia's life had rules. Clean your room. Do your homework. Be careful. Listen. Come downstairs. Go upstairs. Do not do this. Do not do that. But the person online offered something different. Approval. Attention. Validation. He did not need to argue with her parents. He only needed to become the person who seemed to understand what they did not. And for a 13-year-old, that feeling can be powerful. At that age, being understood can feel almost like being rescued from the loneliness of growing up. Interviewer: why did you trust him? Alicia: Because I thought he understood me. Narrator. And that was exactly the opening he had been waiting for. This is why blaming Alicia misses the entire point. A child cannot be expected to see a plan that was built by an adult over time. A child cannot be expected to recognize every false identity, every hidden motive, every quiet strategy behind a screen. Alicia thought she was talking to someone who cared. He knew he was building a path that would eventually lead her outside. That difference matters. To Alicia, the conversations were friendship. To him, they were preparation. And the longer it continued, the more normal it must have felt. A message here, a reply there, a shared interest, a small secret, a feeling that this person was somehow different from everyone else. Slowly, the screen created its own world, separate from the living room, separate from the family, separate from the safety Alicia believed she still had. This is how trust can be moved. Not all at once, a little each day, one message at a time. And while Alicia's parents may have seen her sitting at the computer, they could not see the emotional net being tightened around her. They could not see the way a dangerous adult could mirror a child's feelings back to her. They could not see how a person with far more age, experience, and intent could make himself seem harmless. That is one of the hardest lessons in Alicia's story. Sometimes danger does not begin with fear. Sometimes it begins with kindness that is not real. With listening that has a purpose. With words that sound gentle, but are being used to lead a child away from the people who love her. And that is why this story still matters today. Because the technology has changed, but the pattern has not. The chat rooms of 2002 may look old now. The screens are smaller, faster, brighter. The apps have different names. The messages arrive in different ways. But the emotional doorway is still the same. A child wants to be seen. A dangerous person pretends to see them. And a family may not realize anything is wrong until the trust has already been turned against the child. So before we continue, take 1 second to subscribe to the channel. Stories like Alicia's are not told to create fear, but to create awareness. Because one conversation, one warning sign, one parent looking closer can change the ending for another child. By New Year's Day, believed she was going outside to meet a friend. But there was never a friend waiting for her. There was only a man who had studied her trust from behind a screen. What looked like friendship to Alicia was, to him, a plan. The moment Alicia stepped outside, the world she knew was still only a few steps behind her. The warm house, the family dinner, the Christmas tree, the front door she had left slightly open, because she believed she would come right back. But the night did not give her a way back. Scott Tyree was waiting close enough to call her name. And once Alicia heard it, the small warning inside her came too late. She had already felt something was wrong. She had already thought about turning around. But then she was in the car, and the quiet street of Crafton Heights began to disappear behind her. At first, the signs were familiar. That may have been the cruelest part. She was still close enough to know where she was, still close enough to imagine home, still close enough to believe that if something changed quickly, if someone noticed, if one person looked in the right direction, the night might still be undone. But then the car kept moving. The streets Alicia recognized began to fall away. The names on the signs changed. The roads grew longer. The neighborhoods became unfamiliar. Pittsburgh, the city that had held her entire childhood, was slipping farther behind the car with every mile. Inside the vehicle, Alicia was no longer the girl who had stepped outside to say hello. She was a child being taken away from everything that had made her feel safe. And then came the toll booth. For most people, a toll booth is nothing. A pause on the road, a hand reaching out with money, a gate rising, a car moving forward. But for Alicia, that small booth became a place where hope briefly returned. She had been through toll booths before with her family. In her memory, they were tied to ordinary trips, long drives, maybe vacations, maybe someone in the booth smiling, maybe a small moment of kindness from a stranger. A toll booth meant another person would be close enough to look into the car, close enough to see her face, close enough to notice that something was wrong. And Alicia believed someone would notice. Alicia. I thought someone would notice. Narrator. But the gate lifted, the car moved on, and another piece of hope disappeared. That image is one of the most painful in the entire story. A child crying inside a car, a stranger only a few feet away, money exchanged. The gate rising, the road continuing. No rescue, no question, no interruption. Just the sound of the car moving forward again. And each toll booth after that became another quiet loss. Another chance that passed. Another place where Alicia hoped the world would reach in and stop what was happening, only to watch the gate open and the distance from home grow wider. The drive from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Herndon, Virginia took about 4.5 to 5 hours. For an adult, that might sound like a long but ordinary road trip. For Alicia, it was something else entirely. It was hours of watching the life she knew vanish through a window. Hours of not knowing where she was going. Hours of realizing that the person beside her was not the friend she had imagined through a screen. Hours of understanding that the world outside the car was moving normally while her own world had stopped. Cars passed, lights changed, road signs appeared and disappeared. People went on with their evening, and no one knew. Back in Pittsburgh, Alicia's family was still inside the first chapter of confusion. At home, the house did not look like a scene of obvious danger. There was no broken window, no clear sign that someone had entered, no obvious trail leading away from the door. Even her coat was still there. That detail must have felt impossible. Because a child does not walk into a freezing January night without a coat, unless she thinks she will be back in minutes. Her family searched. They tried to understand. They looked for something that would explain the empty space where Alicia should have been. But the clues did not arrange themselves into an answer. She had been there. Then she was gone. At first, even the situation itself seemed hard to define. Was she nearby? Had she walked somewhere? Would she come back? Had someone seen her? Why was there no clear sign of a struggle? Why was nothing missing? Why did the house still look so normal? That normality was part of the nightmare, because the danger had not left behind the kind of evidence people expected. It had left behind silence, a door, a missing child, and a computer that no one yet fully understood. While her family searched the neighborhood, Alicia was watching the familiar world become smaller behind her. While police tried to make sense of a house with no obvious answers, the car was moving farther south. While everyone in Pittsburgh was still looking close to home, the truth was already racing beyond the city. At home, her family was searching the neighborhood. On the road, Alicia was already crossing state lines. At first, the house did not look like the center of a nightmare. That may have been the most frightening part. There was no broken window, no overturned furniture, no clear sign that someone had forced their way inside. The warmth of the family dinner still lingered in the rooms. The Christmas tree was still standing. The front door still belonged to the same safe home. It had always belonged to the same safe home it had always belonged to. But Alicia was not there. A few minutes earlier, she had been inside with her family. She had said she did not feel well. She had asked to go upstairs and lie down. It was the kind of small sentence no parent would replay with fear in the moment, because nothing about it sounded strange. Children get tired. Children leave the table. Children go upstairs. But Alicia had not gone upstairs. She had not returned to the room. She was not resting. She was not hiding somewhere in the house. She was gone. The first feeling was disbelief. Not panic at full volume yet, but disbelief, the mind trying to protect itself from a truth too large to accept. Maybe she was in another room. Maybe she had stepped away for a second. Maybe someone had missed her passing through the house. Her name would have been called once, then again, then louder. Each unanswered call would have made the silence heavier. A family home can change very quickly when a child does not answer. The same hallway becomes longer. The same rooms feel unfamiliar. The same rooms feel unfamiliar. The same front door begins to look like a question no one wants to ask. Mother, she was just here. That sentence carried the impossible weight of the first hour. Alicia had not vanished from a distant place. She had not been out with friends. She had not taken a bag, money, or anything that suggested a planned escape. She had been in the middle of an ordinary family night, surrounded by people who loved her. And then, somehow, she was missing. When investigators began asking questions, the answers only made the situation stranger. There was no obvious trail, no clear witness standing at the door, no simple explanation waiting in the rooms. Investigator, is anything missing? Mother, not even her coat. Narrator, that was the detail that made the room go cold. Because Pittsburgh in January is not gentle. A child does not walk into that kind of night without a coat, unless she believes she will be back almost immediately. Alicia was not the kind of girl who loved the dark or enjoyed the cold. Her family knew that. They knew this was not a normal choice. They knew this was not simply a child deciding to take a walk after dinner. But in those early moments, investigators had to work with what they could see, and what they could see was confusing. The house did not show the obvious signs people expect when something terrible has happened. That left space for the first theory that often appears in cases like this. Maybe she had left on her own. Maybe she would come back. Maybe this was a misunderstanding that would resolve itself by morning. But Alicia's family could not accept that. Not because they wanted to be difficult, because they knew their daughter. They knew the difference between a teenager being moody and a child disappearing into the freezing dark without protection from the weather. They knew her coat being left behind mattered. They knew the quietness of the house did not mean nothing had happened. It meant whatever had happened had left almost no visible trace. Police began taking information carefully. Names, times, what Alicia had been doing, who she talked to, whether anything seemed different, whether she had been upset, whether she had mentioned anyone. The first hours of an investigation often feel slow to a family because every question sounds smaller than the emergency. But those questions are how panic becomes a map. And in Alicia's case, the map did not begin on the street. It began inside the house, in the living room, with the family computer. That machine had once seemed ordinary. It was where Alicia talked to classmates, played games, did homework, and spent time in the new world of online conversations. Now it became something else. It became a possible witness, a place where hidden names, messages, and fragments of trust might still remain. As the search moved beyond the immediate neighborhood, the family allowed the FBI to examine the computer. That decision must have felt unbearable, handing over something from your own home, because it might be the only thing capable of explaining where your child had gone. Outside, people could search sidewalks, streets, and nearby houses. But Alicia was already far from the place where those searches began. The person who had reached her had not needed to enter the house through a window or door. He had reached her through a screen, so the investigation had to follow him there. The first hours were filled with panic, confusion, and denial, but they also marked the moment the case changed direction. This was no longer only a search through a neighborhood. It was a search through messages, usernames, and digital traces left behind in a home that had looked safe. The answer was not in the street. It was in the hard drive. The first search for Alicia began in the places every family would look first. The rooms of the house, the nearby street, the familiar corners of the neighborhood. But as the hours passed, the investigation began to shift towards something quieter, colder, and far less visible. The trail was not written in footprints. It was not waiting in the snow. It was hidden in the snow. It was hidden inside a machine, sitting in the living room. The FBI took the family computer and began the careful process of creating a legal copy of the hard drive. Today, that may sound routine, but in 2002, digital investigations were not as fast, polished, or familiar as they are now. The tools were slower. The process was heavier. Every step had to be preserved correctly, because whatever was found might become part of the case later. Investigators could not simply click around and hope for the best. They had to protect the original data, copy it properly, and then begin searching through the digital remains of Alicia's online life. And that process took time. About 20 hours. 20 hours is a long time in any investigation. But when a child is missing, 20 hours feels almost unbearable. It is enough time for a car to cross several states, enough time for fear to settle into a family's bones, enough time for every unanswered question to become darker. Somewhere, Alicia was out there. Somewhere, a grown man had taken her away from the house where she had been safe only hours earlier, and inside an FBI workspace, investigators were forced to watch a progress bar crawl forward while the clock kept moving. That is the agony of digital evidence. It can hold the answer, but it does not always give it quickly. The agents were not looking at one simple message that said where Alicia had gone. They were searching through fragments, chat logs, screen names, broken pieces of conversation, names that might be real or might be fake, messages that could mean everything or nothing, a sentence from one night, a username from another, a pattern hidden beneath ordinary teenage chatter. At first, it must have looked like noise. A child's online world can be messy. Friends, jokes, casual conversations, half-finished thoughts, names that appear once and vanish. But investigators knew that somewhere in that clutter was the person who had moved from words to action. Somewhere in the record was the path he had taken to reach Alicia. The computer had watched silently while trust was built. Now it had to become the witness that helped undo what had been done. The irony was impossible to ignore. The computer may have been the doorway that allowed danger close to Alicia, but now, that same computer might become the doorway law enforcement used to reach her. The machine that had seemed harmless, sitting in the safest room of the house, now held the first real map. Every message was a footprint, every screen name was a shadow. And somewhere inside that machine, there was a road to Alicia. Investigators began reading, sorting, comparing, looking for the voice that did not belong, looking for the pattern behind the mask. They had to think like someone who understood computers, but also like someone who understood manipulation. Because this was not only a technical problem, it was a human one. The person who took Alicia had not simply appeared on New Year's Day. He had built access over time. That meant the evidence would likely show patience, repetition, and control. One screen name might not be enough. One message might not be enough. But together, the fragments could begin to form a shape. Slowly, the digital fog began to thin. Investigators found pieces that suggested Alicia had been communicating with someone who was not who he claimed to be. At first, it was still incomplete, a partial trail, a possibility, a shadow moving behind the screen. But in a case where every minute mattered, even a shadow could be worth chasing. Outside the digital lab, Alicia's family could do little but wait. Waiting is one of the cruelest parts of a missing child case. It gives the mind too much space. Every sound could be news. Every phone call could be the one. Every hour without an answer feels like the world is moving on while your own life remains frozen in the moment your child disappeared. For the investigators, the pressure was different, but just as heavy. They knew the hard drive might hold a name, an address, a mistake, a digital fingerprint left behind by someone who believed the screen had protected him. They also knew that the longer the search took, the more dangerous the situation could become. By then, Alicia was no longer just missing from her home. She had been pulled into a hidden world built through messages, false trust, and distance. To find her, investigators had to follow that world backward. From the road to the screen, from the screen to the username, from the username to the person behind it. And just as the hard drive began to offer pieces of the puzzle, another piece was about to arrive from far away. A call from Florida would change the direction of the case. By the second day, Alicia's face was no longer only inside family photo albums. It was in newspapers. It was on missing person posters. It was being shown to strangers who had never met her, but were now being asked to look closely. A 13-year-old girl had vanished from a quiet Pittsburgh neighborhood on New Year's night, and the question was spreading beyond Crafton Heights. Where was Alicia Kozakiewicz? For her family, every public mention must have carried two opposite feelings at once. Hope, because more eyes meant more chances. Fear, because every hour without an answer meant the distance between Alicia and home was growing. The media could spread her image, but it could not stop the clock. The FBI could search the computer, but the hard drive was slow to give up its secrets. The neighborhood could be checked again and again, but Alicia was no longer there. Then, far from Pittsburgh, someone in Florida saw something online that did not feel right. It was not a clean, simple clue. It did not arrive neatly wrapped. The person who contacted authorities was hesitant at first, uncertain, and reportedly difficult to keep on the line. But what he had seen mattered. He believed he had recognized Alicia from the missing person information. Her face, the face now circulating in the news, seemed to match what he had seen online. That single recognition changed everything. Until that moment, investigators had fragments, a missing child, a family computer, chat logs, screen names, a suspicion that the person responsible had used the internet to get close to Alicia. But now the case had something more urgent, a possible sighting connected to the online world. Not on a sidewalk, not in a car window, not in a store. Online. The same world that had been used to reach Alicia was now producing the first real path back to her. The FBI moved quickly. They followed the information from the caller and began focusing on a screen name. In 2002, this was still new territory for many investigations. Today, people hear words like IP address and digital records and understand that almost everything leaves a trace. But back then, this kind of work felt like entering a new frontier. The internet could hide people, but it could also record them. It could create masks, but it could also preserve mistakes. Investigators needed information fast. They reached out to Yahoo because the screen name was connected to that online space. This was not a slow paperwork exercise. This was a life-or-death search. A child was missing. Time mattered. Every delay could change the outcome. And with emergency urgency, the digital trail began to sharpen. From the screen name, investigators were able to move toward an IP address. An IP address is not a person's face. It is not a confession. It is not a hand on a door. But in a digital investigation, it can become a direction. It can tell law enforcement where a connection came from, which provider handled it, and what record might lead to a real-world location. That trail led to Verizon, and Verizon led investigators to an address in Herndon, Virginia. Suddenly, the shadow behind the messages had a place. A real street, a real house, a real name. Scott Tyree. This was the moment the case shifted from searching broadly to moving with purpose. The fragments from Alicia's computer, the call from Florida, the screen name, the IP address, and the service provider records began to connect. Each piece alone might not have been enough. Together, they formed a path. Technology had become the silent witness. It did not speak with emotion. It did not panic. It did not understand what was at stake. But it remembered. It remembered the screen name. It remembered the connection. It remembered where the signal had gone. And in a case where human eyes had missed Alicia at the toll booth, where the street had offered no clear answer, the data finally pointed somewhere. That is why this part of Alicia's story is so important. Because one person looking closely made a call. One image in the news reached someone far away. One screen name led to one IP address. One provider record led to one home in Virginia. If any link in that chain had failed, if the caller had stayed silent, if the records had taken too long, if investigators had dismissed the digital trail as too uncertain, the ending could have been different. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because they show how quickly trust can be misused, but also how one person paying attention can help change the outcome. The FBI now had a direction, not a theory, not just a fear, a direction. For 4 days, Alicia was hidden from the world. But she was not hidden from the data. By the time the FBI had an address in Herndon, Virginia, the case was no longer a search built only on fear. It had a target, a name, a house, a direction. The digital trail had moved from a screen name to an IP address, from an IP address to a service provider, from a service provider to a real location. And now, after days of uncertainty, the investigation was no longer waiting for the next clue. It was moving. The FBI prepared 2 teams, One team would go to Scott Tyree's workplace. The other would go to the house in Herndon. This was not a moment for hesitation. They did not know exactly what they would find inside. They did not know Alicia's condition. They did not know whether she was still there. But they knew enough to act, and in a missing child case, action can become the thin line between tragedy and survival. At the house, agents moved in. The door gave way. Footsteps rushed through the rooms. Voices called out. The search began fast, sharp, and urgent. But at first, they did not see Alicia. The house was being cleared, room by room, and for a terrifying moment, the place that had seemed to hold the answer offered only more uncertainty. But Alicia was there. She heard the noise before she understood it, the crash, the movement, the sudden flood of footsteps. To anyone outside that house, those sounds might have meant rescue. To Alicia, after 4 days of terror, they meant something else. Her mind had been forced into survival mode for too long. She could not immediately believe that the people entering were there to save her. Hope had become dangerous. Trust had become dangerous. Even the sound of strangers rushing through the house did not feel like safety. So she hid. Alicia crawled underneath a bed, trying to stay as quiet as possible. She was not thinking like someone who had been found. She was thinking like someone who still needed to survive the next minute. In that moment, rescue did not arrive as light. It arrived first as fear. Boots moved across the floor. Agents searched the room. Then one of them noticed movement. A voice ordered her to come out. For Alicia, that moment must have felt impossible. She crawled from beneath the bed, frightened, exposed, and uncertain of who was standing in front of her. She had been waiting for the world to find her, but when the world finally came through the door, she did not recognize it at first. She still believed she might be in danger. She still believed the worst could happen in the next breath. Then the agent turned, and Alicia saw the letters on the back of his jacket, FBI. For the first time in 4 days, the letters on a jacket meant more than authority. They meant life. That was the turning point. Not because everything was suddenly healed. Not because the fear disappeared. Not because the fear disappeared. Not because Alicia could instantly return to who she had been before New Year's night. But because the direction of the story changed. She was no longer hidden. She was no longer alone in that house. The silence around her had finally been broken by people who had followed the trail all the way from Pittsburgh to Virginia. Agents moved quickly. Alicia was taken out of the house and placed into safety. Scott Tyree was arrested at his workplace. The digital path had led law enforcement to the right place, and the race against time had finally reached its answer. But back in Pittsburgh, Alicia's family still did not have her in their arms. For them, the nightmare had not ended until someone said the words they had been waiting to hear. We have her. Those 3 words carried the weight of every hour spent searching, every unanswered question, every moment of dread. Since Alicia first disappeared from the house, she was alive. She had been found. She was on her way to medical care. The child who had stepped past the Christmas tree and out into the cold was no longer missing. And yet for Alicia, even rescue did not feel completely real at first. After everything she had endured, safety was not a switch that could simply be turned back on. The agents had found her. The house in Herndon was behind her. The road away from Pittsburgh had finally stopped. But in her mind, one final distance remained. She was not truly home until she saw her family again. When Alicia Kozakiewicz was found, the world saw the ending everyone had been praying for. A missing child was alive. A family received the call they had feared might never come. Investigators had followed a digital trail across state lines and reached her in time. To the public, that moment looked like the close of the story. The search was over. The house in Herndon was behind her. Alicia was safe, but survival is not the same as healing. Survival can happen in a single moment. A door opens, a voice calls out, a jacket turns, and the letters FBI appear like a bridge back to life. But healing does not happen that way. Healing is slower, quieter, less visible. It continues long after the cameras leave, long after the headlines fade, long after strangers stop saying how lucky someone is to be alive. Alicia was alive, but she had also been changed. That is one of the hardest truths in any story like this. A survivor does not simply step back into the old version of life as if nothing has happened. The bedroom is the same. The family is the same. The neighborhood may still be there. But the person returning home has crossed through something no child should ever have to understand. And when everyone else wants to celebrate the rescue, the survivor may still be trying to understand how to breathe in a world that suddenly feels different. Alicia has spoken openly about healing as a process, not a straight road, not a clean before and after. Some days memories return. Certain dates, anniversaries, sounds, or quiet moments can bring the past close again. That does not mean healing has failed. It means healing is real. It moves forward, then pauses, then moves again. And yet Alicia has also said something deeply powerful. There are entire days now when what happened to her does not cross her mind. That sentence carries a different kind of victory. Not loud, not dramatic, but human. A day where the past does not take the first breath in the room. A day where she can live, work, speak, laugh, and exist without being pulled back into that January night. That is what many people misunderstand about survival. The public sees the rescue. The survivor lives the aftermath. The public sees bravery. The survivor has to rebuild trust, routine, identity, and peace. The public sees a headline that ends. The survivor has to learn how to live after the headline. For Alicia, part of that path became purpose. She did not allow her story to remain only a warning whispered after something terrible had already happened. She turned it outward. She became a motivational speaker, an educator, and an advocate. She began speaking to children, parents, schools, and law enforcement. She helped people understand what many families did not understand in 2002, that the internet is not separate from real life. What happens through a screen can reach into a home, into a family, into a child's trust. She created the Alicia Project, using her own experience to teach internet safety and awareness. Her message was not simply be afraid. Fear alone does not protect children. Awareness does, conversation does. Parents listening without judgment does. Children knowing they can ask for help does. Adults understanding that danger, online, often begins quietly does. Alicia also became connected to Alicia's Law, an effort designed to support specialized task forces working to protect children from online harm. That part matters because her own rescue depended on people who knew how to follow digital evidence. The screen name, the IP address, the service provider records, the cooperation between agencies, each piece mattered. If the right people had not moved quickly, if the digital trail had not been understood, Alicia's story could have ended differently. So she fought for the systems that had helped save her. The girl who was once found through a computer later used her voice to protect children sitting in front of one. That is the transformation at the center of Alicia's later life. Not that the past disappeared, not that the pain became simple, but that she took something meant to silence her and turned it into a message loud enough to reach classrooms, parents, investigators, and other children who might never know her name. Alicia's story did not end when the FBI found her in Herndon. That was the day she survived. The years after were where she began to reclaim her life. In the end, Alicia Kozakiewicz's story returns to a few simple images. A Christmas tree, a front door left slightly open, a 13-year-old girl stepping outside without a coat, a computer sitting in the living room. None of those things looked dangerous on their own. The tree belonged to a holiday home. The door belonged to a family that believed its child was safe. The missing coat suggested Alicia expected to come right back. And the computer, placed in the family room where everyone could see it, seemed like a careful choice by parents trying to do the right thing. But Alicia's case changed the way many families understood safety. Because before that night, home meant walls, doors, windows, and people nearby. If a child was inside the house, sitting only a few rooms away, it felt like protection. It felt like control. It felt like nothing outside could reach in. The internet changed that. It made distance invisible. It allowed a stranger to become familiar. without ever standing on the porch. It let someone study a child's trust from behind a screen. Alicia's family thought she was safe because she was at home. But the person waiting for her had already crossed into that home through messages, patience, and false kindness. That is the warning at the heart of this case. Then there was the toll booth, a small place on the road where Alicia hoped the world would notice her, a stranger in a booth, a child in distress, a moment where she believed someone might look through the window and understand that something was wrong. But the money changed hands, the gate lifted, the car moved forward, and another piece of hope disappeared. That image stays with you because it reminds us how close help can feel and still not arrive. One look, one question, one moment of attention might have changed everything. But the road kept going, all the way from Pittsburgh to Herndon, Virginia. And then, 4 days later, came another image, Alicia hiding beneath a bed, hearing footsteps, not yet knowing whether they meant rescue or more fear. She had been found, but she did not know it. Yet, then one of the agents turned, and she saw the letters on his jacket. FBI. For the first time in 4 days, those letters did not just mean authority. They meant life. Alicia was taken to safety. Her family received the words they had been waiting for. We have her. But even after she was found, the story did not truly end. Scott Tyree spent many years behind bars. Later, after his release, his placement near Alicia's family caused deep fear. When he broke the rules of his release, he was sent back for more time. But Alicia's life became bigger than what happened to her. She became a survivor, an educator, and an advocate. She turned her story into a warning for parents, children, schools, and investigators. She helped people understand that online safety cannot be treated as a small conversation or a one-time warning or something children will simply figure out on their own. Do not assume a child will recognize danger just because it comes through a screen. Do not assume a computer in the living room is enough. Do not assume, this could never happen to my family. A small conversation can matter. A parent asking one more question can matter. A child knowing they can come forward without shame or fear can matter. Awareness does not remove every danger, but silence gives danger more room to grow. If this story stays with you, subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts below, and share this video with a parent who needs to hear it. Alicia walked out past a Christmas tree as a child. Years later, she stood before the world as a survivor. And between those two images is a warning no family should ignore.